Hey guys, and welcome to Section 4, Chapter 2 of the Pre-Algebra program entitled Multiplying Integers. And in this section, of course, we're going to multiply integers. We are also going to multiply expressions, and we are going to evaluate expressions again. So this is something that we're going to constantly be seeing. It's a huge skill that we're going to need in algebra. So we're going to revisit it over and over again in a lot of different sections. For this section, I have written out for you this key to help you know what sign is appropriate when multiplying integers. So the multiplication itself should be very simple, something that you've been doing for years, but it's the signage that can give us a little bit of trouble. So let me start working some examples for you. So say we had something like 4 times 6, which is the first scenario here. A positive times a positive. Well, of course, we're going to get a positive. So that's super easy and something you're very familiar with. Now, what if we have something like negative 4 times 6? Now we have the second case here. Again, the multiplication itself is the same, 24. But now we have a negative times a positive, and that's going to yield me a negative. Similarly, if I had 4 times negative 6, that also would yield me negative 4, because again, multiplication is commutative, something that we learned last chapter. And then my third and final scenario is when both integers are negative. And in that case, they negate each other, and the value becomes positive. Okay, let's do another example. I'm actually going to do it up here next to it so you can continue to see the box, although you should have written that down in your notes. Okay, so let's say we have something called 3 times 10. Of course, we know this to be 30 because a positive times a positive is a positive.
Hi.
Now, what if I have negative 3 times 10? Again, now I have my second scenario here, and in this case, my solution is going to be negative. And then in my third case, both numbers are negative, and it's going to yield me a positive result. Okay, we're going to continue getting practice with this. I'm going to give you one more example with more than one number here. What if we had something like negative 2 times negative 3 times 5? This is multiplication, which means any order goes. But in general, I work left to right when I can. So I'm going to take the first two numbers and multiply them together. And notice I have this scenario, negative times a negative. And if you look at your chart really quick, if you don't remember, that yields us a positive value. So negative 2 times negative 3 is a positive 6. And then I would have to multiply it times 5, which of course would give me 30. Okay, but just to demonstrate the commutative property here, let's do the same problem, but this time I'm going to evaluate these last two numbers first. In this case, I have a negative times a positive, which yields me a negative. So I keep this negative 2 along for the ride, and I know that negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Now I have a situation where I have a negative times a negative. And again, looking at your chart, you can see that that's going to yield a positive. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 15 and get 30 and keep it positive. And so, again, we've checked here. In either order matters. Okay, moving on. We're going to multiply expressions. So what if I had an example like 4 times 7x? Well, I'm going to multiply the values that I can, and then I'm just going to add the x in. I'm just going to multiply it in at the end. So 4 times 7 is 28, and then we're going to multiply that times x. And remember now that we're in pre-algebra, we don't need a sign for multiplication anymore. We assume it's multiplication when I put things together with no operation. So we're going to get in the practice of writing it that way. It should just be 28x. Let's do another one though. Let's do negative 8m times negative 6n. Or, more commonly, we will write it simply with parentheses. Okay, again, first thing I'm going to do is multiply my integers. And notice I have a negative times a negative, which yields me a positive. So 8 times 6 is 48, and I'm going to keep the sign. And then I'm going to multiply that value by m, and then again by n. So my answer is 48mn. All right, I'm going to do one more example of this type for you, just to fill you up with lots of types that you might see here. All right, what if I have multiple values? Again, order doesn't matter. I typically just work left to right. So I'm going to grab the first two values, and there's no numbers there except for the 2. So I'm just going to bring the 2 down, and I'm going to multiply it times the p. But notice they both have negatives. Negative times negative is a positive. So I'm going to keep this positive here. I'm not going to add anything. But now I have to take that 2p and multiply times negative q. So I'm going to get 2pq, but I have a positive times a negative, which is going to give me a negative value. And so my answer is negative 2pq. All right. There's one more thing that we're going to practice in this section, and we've done it several times. Now we're going to evaluate negative 9ab, where a is equal to negative 2 and b is equal to 1. So again, we've done this a couple of times now. Hopefully you're becoming more comfortable with it. We're going to make the replacement. Wherever I see an a, I'm going to put negative 2, and where I see b, I'm going to put 1. And remember, when I make the replacement, I'm going to put the replacements in parentheses. It's going to help me make sure I do my order correctly. And now I have a situation like I was just evaluating. So I'm going to grab my first two values, and I know 9 times 2 is 18. I have a negative times a negative, which is going to yield me a positive. So I'll leave 18 positive here. And then multiply times 1. And of course, a positive times a positive is a positive. So our answer here is 18. At this point, I want you guys to finish up your notes, go back, read the section on all of the examples, and then begin your assignment.